Man, the 2020 draft was kind of wild when it happened. We had players be reached in the top 5, overall busts in the top 10, future Hall of Famers potentially outside of the top 10. And this was my first year that I did draft grades once the draft was completed. So in today's video, we are going to be reacting to, my 2020 draft grades. So if you guys do enjoy these videos, feel free to drop a thumbs up. I'll react to some other previous maybe predictions or grades or rankings that I've done in the past that we could look back on in hindsight and see if I was right or not, if I was cooking or not. Let's see what I had to say about the 2020 draft. Top and Knicks, I want to do a LaMelo Hornets. But yeah, if you guys could drop a like on this video, I'd really appreciate it. Let's get into the draft grades. So number 1, Anthony. All right, before I get into this, I can't tell. I guess I do look younger. I can't really tell. You can let me know in the comments. But this was my senior year of college, which is just kind of wild. And this draft was in November. It was like the first time it wasn't in the summer. That's why I'm kind of pale in this, sadly. Was the first overall pick in the draft. I didn't think he was going to go number 1, and I thought he should just because of the fit in Minnesota. I'm going to give this pick an A-. I think there's nothing wrong with this pick, and I think he's a better fit than LaMelo in Minnesota, so I'm just going to give it an A-. I mean, we also could give grades, like C's could be the normal grade, but I'm going to give this an A- just because I think they didn't overcomplicate this. They didn't trade down and maybe not get enough value. They took Edwards, which was smart, but it'll be interesting to see because I know he said he wasn't as passionate about basketball. I don't know why you would say that, but hey, he still went number 1. Number 2. All right, yeah, I forgot about that he said that before the draft, and I don't know why I didn't get maybe like an A or an A+, because I said I didn't think he was going to go number 1. I guess I thought it was going to be LaMelo Ball at the time, but I was like, he should go number 1 for sure. So I don't know why I gave it an A-, but I still really like the pick, so that was just kind of a weird grading there. And I really forgot Ant said that, which is just kind of wild. Let's see what I give the Warriors taking Wiseman. I feel like I remember liking this pick. James Wiseman to the Warriors. I'm going to give this an A. If they took LaMelo Ball, it would have been a lot lower because I think the fit wouldn't have been as nice as James Wiseman, who could slide in as their 5, which they needed as their rim protector, rim runner, pick and roll maestro. It's who they pretty much needed, and they aced the pick, so I'm giving it an A. Moving on. All right, yeah, that's not like the greatest take in the world because LaMelo Ball is a lot better than James Wiseman is since this 2020 draft. Now, you could look at it and like zag off that completely and be like, if they drafted LaMelo, he could have maybe stole some usage from like Steph Curry, who was so important obviously to that 2022 championship team. People will look back at the 2003 draft and say the same thing. If the Pistons drafted Melo, would they still have won a championship? Instead of having Darko, would they ever end up trading for Rasheed Wallace still? Who knows? It was, I don't know. I guess it's the wrong pick in hindsight. Obviously, you'd rather have a LaMelo Ball or like a Tyrese Halliburton. But you know what? They won the 2022 championship, so it really doesn't matter. On to number 3, LaMelo Ball. This was the last of the consensus top 3. Going to Charlotte. I think this was still a no-brainer for Charlotte. I'm going to give it an A. I really don't think there was anything around it. There was no other player that I would take here. If I were them, maybe thinking about trading down and maybe select like Nneka Okongwu or something. But yeah, I'm going to give it an A. Good pick, Charlotte. We'll see what they do with all their guards and Rozier, Graham, and Ball in the future. Will they trade for Russ? I don't think so at the moment. Now, I forgot that Russ was kind of like on the trade block there. And then me saying, should they have traded down for Nneka Okongwu? Good thing they didn't do that. I forgot, like even mentioning like Devontae Graham as part of that Hornets future. What a different time 2020 was. Well, they made the right pick. I'm glad I gave it a good grade. LaMelo Ball was still a top 5 player in the class. So those 3 were in my top 5. And there's 2 other players that I know were in my top 5. One, it's funny, like they're both like on the complete opposite ends of the evaluation scale that we'll get to, and I'll mention who they are. Here's where the draft got interesting. I thought like 10 different guys could go at 4 to the Bulls, and they ended up taking Patrick Williams. I'm going to give this grade a C. It is going to be a very low grade so far for what I mentioned because I just went from an A-, an A, to a C. It's just I think it was a little bit of a reach. I like Patrick Williams a lot. He didn't really start at Florida State. He's a 3-and-D stretch 4, which you could use, but I'm just kind of intrigued where he's going to fit in Chicago because he's not going to be in that starting lineup unless you like him at the 3 next to Markkanen and Levine, which could be an option. I just kind of prefer him as a power forward, and with Larry Markkanen there, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. I thought they could maybe trade down with like Atlanta or maybe with the Knicks and still have gotten Patrick Williams. But I think maybe Detroit would have still taken him if he was on the board there at 7. I just think if he was their guy, they got their guy. I'm just going to give it a C right now just because I think it was a little bit of a reach. All right, I mean, I'm kind of not wrong in that. And this was pre-Nikola Vucevic. and pre-DeMar DeRozan as well, and he still didn't have playing time. And I think Patrick Williams is still a good player. Was he worth the 4th overall pick in this draft? No, but I think they could have taken some other busts in this class for sure. It's just they never prioritized Williams' development. And if Chicago finally goes into a rebuild, I hope they give him like an Ayo Dosunmu type contract, or they give him a 1-year deal and a lot more usage and playing time and focus into their rebuild. Something they probably should have been doing a little bit more after 2020, because they shouldn't have traded for Vucevic. Yes, getting DeRozan was great for them, and they looked really fun with Lonzo. Like, Lonzo was a great pickup, but getting DeRozan in that 2022 team, but then obviously, like, injuries. It was kind of like a brief stint. It was like January of 22, I think, when Lonzo got hurt, and they were one of the better teams in the East, but it never came to fruition. So this pick, obviously, was a reach in hindsight.
At 5, they selected Isaac Okoro, the wing out of Auburn. I'm going to give this a B+. I like this pick. They needed a defensive wing desperately, and why not get the best one in the draft? I'm glad they didn't take a backcourt member, because they already have Darius Garland and Colin Sexton. They didn't need another guard. Their front court was crowded, so hey, they got somebody they could put in the middle perfect that they could start. So I think this was a good pick by Kobe Altman. The only other person I would maybe considered here at 5 was Denny Avdia, but I like Okoro. That's why I'm giving it a B+.
Yeah, I think that's fair about Okoro. I think this was pre-Jared Allen as well, but they got Jared Allen very soon after this, and I think, like, looking back on it, it's like not like, obviously there's better players that went after him, but they could have taken a much worse player. Like, Okoro is still giving them rotational minutes as they are still trying to compete for a championship a couple years later. So it's not the best pick in the world. It's not the worst pick in the world.
At 6, the Hawks kind of surprised a lot of people. They took Nneka Okongwu out of USC, which I was like, that's kind of a head scratcher since they traded for Clint Capella last year. They have Dwayne Dedmon. Dwayne Dedmon has 1 year left being fully guaranteed on his deal, and Clint Capella, I believe, has 2 years left on his contract. So I was like, I don't really know if I agree with that. I'm going to give it a B, just for the fact that now they kind of have a crowded front court with John Collins, with DeAndre Hunter, if you view him as a 4, now with Dwayne Dedmon, Clint Capella, and Nneka Okongwu. I just thought they could maybe benefit from a wing or Tyrese Halliburton at this pick. But Nneka Okongwu, I really like. It's not like they drafted a bad player. I just don't know if I really agree with the need there with Okongwu. So I'm going to give it a B. At 7.
Yeah, I mean, like, going back on it, this is still kind of true today. Like, Okongwu has been backing up Clint Capella ever since he was drafted 6th overall. Didn't really make sense then, and, like, I thought maybe if they ever move Capella and they finally play Okongwu, that would make sense. But maybe it's going to be year 4, year 5. Well, it's going to be, I guess, year 5 we may finally see Okongwu start, if that like starts to happen next year. I know he's currently dealing with an injury right now. All right, Killian Hayes, he was somebody that was in my top 5 in this draft. I liked him a lot.
7, the Pistons were able to select Killian Hayes. I'm going to give this an A-. You guys know me. I love Killian Hayes, and I think getting him at 7 was fantastic for Detroit. They didn't overthink the pick. I think Obi Toppin wouldn't have been a good fit at all for them. And I actually like the potential here of Killian Hayes rather than going like Tyrese Halliburton. So yeah, I'm going to give it an A-.
Yikes.
Honest, good job Detroit there at 7, but we'll get to them later with a pick I didn't really agree on. The Knicks took Obi Toppin at 8. As a Knicks fan, I really wanted Tyrese Halliburton here. I'm going to give the grade a B-, but if they're able to move Julius Randle, I'll give it a B. Obi Toppin was the best college player last year as he won the Naismith Award. He's a power forward that is great inside. He can catch lobs. He can shoot the ball a little bit. His big downfall is his defense. It's not great right now, and he's getting drafted or put into a system that revolves around defense with Tom Thibodeau's kind of system. So if he works on his defense and he gets better, good job on the pick. If they trade Julius Randle, fine job on the pick. I just don't really like it right now with Julius Randle. He's already behind. He's going to be 23 in March. A couple question marks with the pick. But it's not like it was a really bad pick as they took a really good player. I just think they need to move Julius Randle for it to go up in a grade. So I'm going to give it a B- for now.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, like, looking back on that, I'm kind of right, because it was the same thing with the Nneka Okongwu. Like, why draft somebody that wasn't having much positional versatility? You were never going to play Randle and Toppin at the 5 and the 4 together. Tibbs was never serious about that. And this was coming off Randle's really bad year, too, with the Knicks in his first year in New York. And they kept him around. Obviously, it worked out. He was an All-NBA and All-Star guy in 21 and in 23. So Obi was never going to have a chance to start and be that main power forward in New York. Obviously, he's kind of having the best season of his career in Indiana. Will he ever be an all-star? No, but can he be a nice spark plug, offensive big off the bench? Yes. It's a shame it wasn't in New York, though. I really wanted them to take Halliburton at that time.
Moving on to 9 with the Wizards selecting Denny Avdia. I'm going to give this a B+. I didn't think Denny was going to fall to 9. I don't even think he was going to fall past 8 from the Knicks. So the Wizards getting him in at 9 was pretty good value. Will you about their defense? I don't know if I can say he will, as they were the worst defensive team in the league last year. That's why I thought Okongwu would have been perfect. Maybe they could have looked at like Jalen Smith or Devin Vassell possibly at that selection. But I think with Denny Avdia possibly pretty much being a top 5 consensus guy, getting him at 9 is good value. I'm giving it a B+.
Yeah, I think like just looking back on that, like Avdia probably should have went over Isaac Okoro, maybe Onyeka Okongwu, definitely Killian Hayes. B+, yeah, I think like looking back on it, that should probably be in the A's. Like Avdia got a second contract from the Wizards, and he's pretty underrated. They haven't really been able to win with him, unfortunately, but he's still a good player.
At 10, the Suns took Jalen Smith, which you might think was like, oh, okay, a little bit of a reach there. I'm going to give it a B. I think Jalen Smith is actually a really good player. I just think at 10, it might be a little too high. He can shoot the ball. He can block shots. He can actually go out to the perimeter a little bit as well. He did that at Maryland. I think he's a fantastic player, but I mean, I couldn't even give it a B-. You know what? I'm changing it to a B- only because they're really drafting a definite backup with this pick. Top 10 pick, they're using it on a definite backup because he's not going to start over DeAndre Ayton now. They could maybe put him next to DeAndre Ayton, and then maybe I'll bump this up to a B if they're going to roll with that. But I don't know if they will at the moment, so I'm going to leave it as a B-. But if he starts at the 4, I'll give it a B.
Yeah, and I think that's like what happened basically. And I don't know if that's what James Jones, the GM of the Suns, envisioned, and he was going to put Jalen Smith next to DeAndre Ayton. It didn't work out. They didn't give him proper time to develop, and they quickly shipped him off to Indiana. And like Obi Toppin has turned his career around a little bit in Indiana. So he was a good player. Should he have gone 10 in a, like hindsight? No, we should not have, but he's still a good player. So at least you'll take that. Before we get back into the video, I want to give a word from today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is by far the easiest way to play fantasy sports. If I'm either going to a game, watching a game with friends, or maybe it's just a random night that I want to make the game that I'm watching a little bit more interesting, I will use Underdog Fantasy. And my favorite part about Underdog Fantasy is their pick'em game. So you go to the pick'em tab basically on the Underdog website or app, and you pick whether players will have a higher or lower stat total in that game for a chance to win big. You can pick between 2 to 5 players in your pick'em entry, and you can win up to 20 times your money on a single game if you get all your picks right. Also, another amazing thing that Underdog Fantasy does for you new customers that use my link in the description is you can get the new customer specials. So basically it could be somebody like Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, or Nikola Jokic, and you just have to say that they're going to get higher than 0.5 points on the night that they're playing. New customers also get a 100% deposit match up to $100 with my link in the description and use code SROS, that's SROS. That's a 100% deposit match up to $100. That's a no-brainer. Use my code SROS, and please, like always, remember to play responsibly. And thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring today's video.
Vassell going to the Spurs at 11 is going to get a B+ for me. I think that's pretty good value where he was going to go probably from the 8 to 14 range, so they got him smack in the middle. He's not as good of a defender as Isaac Okoro and not as good of an offensive player as Aaron Nesmith, but he's kind of in the middle. He's a good defensive player and a good offensive player. Not great on both ends, but he's solid there. And I think with DeMar DeRozan probably playing his last year in San Antonio, he could be a nice starting small forward for them going into the future. So that's why I'm giving it a B+.
I think that's pretty much true, like entirely. And I think maybe I undersold his offensive game a little bit, but you know, he's still a good player for the Spurs. Now, lastly, the other player in my top 5, joining Killian Hayes, Anthony Edwards, James Wiseman, and LaMelo Ball, was Tyrese Halliburton. I was so high on him. I'm excited to see what I had to say about him at the time.
At 12, the Kings were able to select Tyrese Halliburton. I'm giving this an A+. Yeah, my first A+ here. This is tremendous value for Halliburton. People thought he could go possibly to the Warriors at 2. He can go to the Bulls at 4. I wanted the Knicks to take him at 8. I thought he could have went to the Hawks at 6. And the Kings got him at 12. This is a great first selection in Monte McNair's Kings regime. So I think this is a phenomenal job by Sacramento. I think they should look to move Buddy Hield, but with the Sixers being like his top suitor, trading Josh Richardson for Seth Curry, I don't know if that's going to happen anymore. So he probably won't start right away.
It's funny, like Buddy Hield was the top suitor and he ended up being a Sixer a couple of years later here this year at the deadline.
But I love the pick, giving it an A+.
Yeah, so I was so high on that pick. I was very high on Halliburton. I was like, this guy doesn't do anything like below average or even at average. He does everything above average, and like this is a guy I want. Did I think he was going to be an all-star starter? No, I thought he was just going to be a really good all-around player that was a very safe prospect. But yeah, the Kings hit an absolute home run on that pick, and obviously the Pacers hit a home run trading for him a few years later.
Lewis going to the Pelicans at 13. It's going to get a B for me. Now, I mocked this so many times leading up to my actual mock, my official one, but the reason I didn't have him going to the Pelicans at 13 in that mock was because they just traded for 2 new point guards in George Hill and Eric Bledsoe. And they
wow. that was a while ago. That was a while ago.
We have Lonzo Ball, so I was like, okay, maybe they should just go with a wing or a big here at 13. But they ended up going with another ball handler. I love Kyra Lewis. I would love Kyra and Lonzo in New Orleans. But with also Bledsoe and George Hill there, I feel like it's too crowded at the point guard position. That's why I'm giving it a B.
And, like, I don't know if, like, I mean, Kyra Lewis didn't work out for the Pelicans and was pretty much a bust for them. But, like, looking back on the Lonzo idea, I mean, we all thought they were dumb for letting him walk because he was a good young point guard, or they basically did a sign-and trade with the Chicago Bulls. And I guess in hindsight, maybe they knew the injuries were, like, inevitable, and that's why they let him walk, which is just kind of crazy to think about.
Celtics got Aaron Nesmith at 14, the sharpshooter out of Vanderbilt. I'm giving this a B+, especially if Gordon Hayward isn't coming back, or they're going to try to flip Gordon Hayward for a big.
Yeah, and then he kind of shocked everybody and got the bag from Charlotte.
Big or something like that. But like I said, he's a sharpshooter. He's great in pull-up. He's great off the dribble. He's good off ball. I think this is a great pick for the Celtics bench, who needs an upgrade with their shooting, and they got it. First,
yeah, so like Nesmith obviously has, like Obi Toppin and like Jalen Smith, has turned his career around, he's done a 180 in Indiana, is one of the best three-point shooters in the league, and obviously playing with Tyrese Haliburton helps, but he didn't really develop in Boston, and obviously Boston was able to get like Malcolm Brogdon in that deal as well, and then turn Brogdon into Jrue Holiday, so it all kind of worked out for both parties, including Indiana and Boston. But I like Nesmith out of Vanderbilt a ton. I'm surprised he didn't work out with the Celtics.
First pick outside the lottery, the Magic took Cole Anthony, the point guard out of UNC. I'm giving this a B+. A lot of people's mock drafts had him in the 20 to 30 range, and I was praying he would fall to my Knicks at 23. And I think this is a really good pick for Orlando. I think Cole Anthony is a top 10 player in this draft. I love it, and I think it gives you an insurance policy with Fultz, saying he doesn't maybe get to where you want him to be. And if anything, he's a backup point guard next year because DJ Augustine is leaving in free agency. Good job not taking a big. Give it a B+ to Orlando.
Now, yeah, I think that was a pretty good take. I'm about to get into a bad take 1 second, but like Cole Anthony, I think has been a borderline top 10 player from this class. He's been a great backup point guard for them since they drafted him, and I think he was also a very safe prospect as well. Now, I remember not liking the Isaiah Stewart pick at all.
Now, at 16, this was supposed to be Houston, but then they traded it shortly before the draft started to Detroit, and they took Isaiah Stewart. This is getting my lowest grade so far. I'm giving it a D+. As a rebuilding team, who might be the worst team in the league next year, taking a center that can't shoot at 16, I just can't get behind it. I think there was just so many more higher upside players that they could have used on this pick, like Pukazevsky, Josh Green, RJ Hampton, Tyrese Maxey, Leandro Bolmaro, Tyrell Terry, Jaden McDaniels, Malachi Flynn. I just didn't really agree with the Isaiah Stewart pick. That's why I'm giving it a D+. So yeah, lowest grade so far. Next.
All right, well, that's kind of not true, like going back to the beginning part of that, because Isaiah Stewart can shoot, and he's a physical bruiser big that can play defense and shoot the ball, and that is insanely valuable. He got extended from the Detroit Pistons. Obviously, he didn't really take into account the off-the-court stuff, or kind of in the arena stuff. Obviously, he recently just punched Drew Eubanks and got suspended for that. And yeah, that is a terrible take by me. That's a terrible valuation. Isaiah Stewart was a great pick there for being a mid-first round pick. And I mentioned a bunch of guys after him, like Bolmaro, Pukazevsky, Tyrell Terry, that are not better than Isaiah Stewart, or even close. Yes, in hindsight, maybe if they ended up taking a Tyrese Maxey, that would have been great. Or I don't even know if like Precious Achiuwa is better. Probably not. So I think that was a good pick from Detroit. And in hindsight, that should be like a B+.
Next up, we have, I believe, technically the Thunder at 17. Yes, they ended up trading Ricky Rubio back to the Timberwolves.
Yeah, there was like 90 trades during the 2020 draft. It was crazy.
At 17 to take Alexis Pukazevsky. I'm giving this a B+. I think this is a high upside pick. Definitely Pukazevsky, only being 18 years old. He's going to go into a team that's going to be so focused on player development with their young guys. I think they're going to develop him correctly. I really like this pick for OKC, giving it a B+. Next.
Nope, well, that just didn't happen at all. He was a bust for them.
So we have Josh Green going to the Mavericks at 18. Gonna give this a B+ as well. Somebody that could be a nice 3-and-D guy for that team, as they traded away Seth Curry for Josh Richardson. I don't know if I agree with that trade. It depends where you look at it on the spectrum. Do you prefer defense in Josh Richardson or the shooting in Seth Curry? But back to Green, I'm giving it a B+. I think this is a guy that you could put around Luka Doncic, help him on the defensive end, help him on the offensive end. Giving it a B+.
Green's been kind of up and down and like a little bit inconsistent in Dallas, but it's still been a good pick. And I mean, he did get extended by them. And going back to that Seth Curry trade, yeah, that was not a great deal for Dallas in hindsight.
19 was kind of wild because the Nets ended up trading it to the Clippers for Landry Shamet, and then the Clippers ended up trading it to...
I forgot about that. Hated that trade for the Nets. I was never a Landry Shamet guy.
The Pistons for Luke Kennard. The Pistons ended up taking Sadiq Bey. Giving this a B+. I think Sadiq Bey is tremendous value at pick 19. I would have taken him at 16 over Isaiah Stewart. Moving on to 20 for the Miami.
Yeah, and I think like Bey, like a good role-playing scorer that late in the first round, it's a solid pick.
They took Precious Achua out of
Achua, Matt.
Memphis. I'm giving this an A-. He is a high motor. He hustles up and down the floor. I think he's going to be perfect for that Miami system. You can plop him into the middle of Bam and Jimmy Butler, right at that power forward spot. Great job, Andy Ellisberg and Pat Riley. 21.
I'm surprised that pick didn't work out for them. I know he was in the Kyle Lowry sign and trade, but yeah, I thought Precious was really going to work out for the Heat.
When the Sixers took Tyrese Maxey, I'm going to give this a B.
Oh, Matt, what? I thought I liked Maxey coming out of Kentucky. Damn.
Like Tyrese Maxey, I just would have preferred Tyrell Terry personally.
Oh my God, shut up. Just stop talking.
But I think he'll be a good pick. I don't know if he'll be the primary ball handler or that secondary ball handler right after Ben Simmons that maybe Sixers fans are expecting him to be right away. But he's definitely a good player and a good pick. Giving it a solid B. Zeke Naji went to the Denver Nuggets at pick 22. I'm giving this a B as well. I'm not a huge fan of Zeke Naji, especially as a power forward, but I'm thinking they're going to try to plop him right next to Nikola Jokic. That's why I'm not a huge fan of that. That's why I'm giving it a B, because I can see the upside around it and the reasoning, because they desperately needed to take a big to possibly fill Paul Millsap's shoes and Jeremy Grant, who both could leave in free agency, as Paul Millsap's getting looked at by the Blazers, and I don't think Jeremy Grant's coming back to the Nuggets. So I'm glad they addressed that need. I just don't know if I really like Zeke Naji. Like, Precious Achiuwa would have been perfect, but I like where they're going. That's why I gave it a B.
Yeah, I mean, like, Naji was good for them, and then kind of taking a step back this year, and this was all before they ended up trading for Aaron Gordon.
So we have technically the Timberwolves at 23. I thought this was the Knicks pick, but there was just so many trades on draft night. Who took Leandro Bolmaro? I'm giving this a B+. I don't expect the Timberwolves to be all that good next year, and Leandro Bolmaro, they don't really have to use resources on him. He's going to stay in Barcelona, at least for next year, develop a little bit more over there. I really like his game. He's a crafty playmaker, and I think he'll be huge for Minnesota going forward post-2021. Giving it a B+.
That just wasn't true.
24 belonged to the Pelicans, but it ended up going to the Nuggets, and they took RJ Hampton. I'm going to give this a B+ as well. I think it's a high upside, low risk pick here at 24. They ended up giving up a protected 2023 pick. And if you can develop into a good secondary guard that you could plug in next to Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, it was a very good pick. I like where Tim Connolly's head was at. I'm going to give it a B+.
Yeah, I liked RJ Hampton a ton as a prospect.
And then my Knicks at 25, taking Emmanuel quickly. I'm going to give it a B. He's a good shooter. He's a very good free throw shooter and three-point shooter mainly. He's a good ball handler. He's very fast. I like his motor on the defensive end. I'm giving it a B. I would have preferred Tyrell Terry. If you watched my stream,
God damn it, I love Tyrell Terry coming out of Stanford. I really did.
I was like, all right, Malachi Flynn or Tyrell Terry, I would have been happy with. And they ended up taking quickly, who I don't think is a bad player at all. I just think they could have got him a little bit later, especially at pick 33, which they had in the second round. Celtics took Peyton Pritchard at 26. I'm giving this a C+. I really didn't like this pick at all for them. I would have preferred, if you want that like senior role point guard who's more of a court general than really a playmaker, I would have preferred Trey Jones over Peyton Pritchard. But if you're really going true point guard, I would have rather had Malachi Flynn and Tyrell Terry at this pick, who were both on the board. That's why I'm giving it a C+.
Yeah, the Terry and Flynn comparisons, terrible take by me. Pritchard's better than them. You could say Trey Jones is better than Peyton Pritchard, but I think Peyton Pritchard was a good pick for the Celtics. Like, this would be a B+ in hindsight.
The Jazz took Udoka Azubuike at 27. I'm giving this a C-. I was not a big fan at all with this pick. With Jaden McDaniels still on the board, I would have liked that. Malachi Flynn, Tyrell Terry, Desmond Bane. But they went with the center I feel like could have went in the second round. I would have also preferred Daniel Otoru over Azubuike. And they ended up moving Tony Bradley with cash and their second round pick to, I believe, Detroit, which also did make a lot of sense. Not a great draft for the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, I didn't like that pick at all, and that was right by me at least.
Timberwolves also had the 28th pick as they traded down from 17 to the Thunder. They took Jaden McDaniels. I really like this pick. At 28, it's such a high upside pick. I'm giving it an A-. With Anthony Edwards, Leandro Bolmaro, and Jaden McDaniels, Gerson Rosas really did a good job in this draft drafting wing players.
Wow, there we go. That was a good take by me. I probably even didn't realize how good of a defender McDaniels was going to be.
Raptors took Malachi Flynn at 29. I'm giving this an A- as well. I think this is incredibly good value. He's kind of similar to like a Fred VanVleet, who might leave them in free agency. We'll have to wait and see on that. But at 29, it's great value. A fantastic pick by Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster, giving it an A-.
Yeah, Dante DiVincenzo did not work out for the Raptors. I was surprised he didn't work out in Toronto either. I thought he probably would have been like on the Peyton Pritchard scale at this point of his career, but it just didn't work out.
And then finally, we have the Memphis Grizzlies, who traded up to the last pick in the first round to select Desmond Bane, the sharpshooter out of TCU. I'm giving this an A+. Zach Kleeman absolutely aced this draft with Xavier Tillman and Desmond Bane. A lot of people thought he can go like as high as 18 at the Dallas Mavericks, so I think this was an incredible job by the Grizzlies front office. I'm giving it an A+.
All right, that was a pretty good take by me. That is a scary sight. But yeah, I feel like I definitely hit on some of my grades. Like I love the Tyrese Haliburton pick. I love the Desmond Bane pick. I love the Jaden McDaniels picks. But I also disliked Isaiah Stewart. I loved Killian Hayes. I loved Malachi Flynn. I didn't entirely love Tyrese Maxey. He was definitely up and down at times in this class. Let me know what you guys think of this video, the picks, my grades in the comments below. And drop a like if you guys enjoy this style of content, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.